You crack open a can after a long week. You raise a glass at a wedding, at a funeral, at nothing in particular, just a Tuesday that needed one good moment. You clink bottles with strangers at a bar during a match, and for a few seconds you love people you'll never see again. Someone says cheers, glasses touch, and for a second everything feels lighter. It's so ordinary, you never ask where it came from. You assume it's simple. Grain, water, time, and eventually, almost by accident, someone left dough out too long in the rain, forgot about it, came back and drank it anyway. Farming first. Bread first. Beer a happy accident centuries later, a footnote to agriculture. That story is wrong. And the real one is stranger. In 2018, a team led by Stanford archaeologist Li Liu examined stone mortars carved directly into the floor of Raqefet Cave in northern Israel. The mortars are 13,000 years old. They were carved by the Natufians, hunter-gatherers, not farmers. Agriculture didn't exist anywhere on Earth yet. Nobody had planted a single seed on purpose. Nobody had domesticated a single animal. These were people who followed food, who moved with the seasons, who owned almost nothing they couldn't carry. And yet, residue trapped inside that carved stone told a very specific story. Malted wheat, malted barley, deliberately soaked, deliberately fermented, deliberately brewed. Not spoiled grain. Not an accident. A process repeated, refined enough to leave a signature in the rock. A beer made and drunk inside a cave. Here's the detail that changes everything. That cave wasn't a kitchen. It was a graveyard. The Natufians buried their dead in Raqefet Cave, carefully, deliberately, and they drank there beside the graves. Funeral feasts, with something that got you drunk, thousands of years before the pyramids existed, thousands of years before anyone had written a word. So archaeologist Brian Hayden asked an uncomfortable question. What if farming wasn't invented to solve hunger at all? What if humans went through the slow, exhausting work of domesticating wheat and barley, clearing land, saving seed, waiting entire seasons for a harvest, for a much less practical reason? To keep the drinking going, to keep the feast going, to keep people coming back to sit together. He called it the beer before bread hypothesis. It's still debated today, and not every archaeologist agrees. But sit with what it implies. The foundation of civilization, permanent settlements, private property, agriculture itself, may have been built by people chasing the exact feeling you chase on a Friday night. Not raw survival. Connection. A reason to sit down together and feel something, on purpose. Move forward 8,000 years, to the first true cities in Mesopotamia. This is where it gets stranger. Some of the oldest written symbols on Earth, pressed into wet clay in the city of Uruk over 5,000 years ago, aren't myths and they aren't laws. They're ration records, small pictographs tracking exactly how much beer each worker was owed for a day's labor. Before humans wrote a single poem, before they wrote down a single law or a single prayer, they wrote down who got paid in beer and how much. Writing, arguably the most important invention in human history, may have taken its first steps as a bar tab. The Sumerians didn't just drink beer, they worshipped it. A hymn nearly 4,000 years old is addressed directly to Ninkasi, goddess of beer. Read it closely and it isn't only a prayer. It's a recipe, step-by-step instructions for brewing, disguised as a song, set to rhythm and repetition on purpose, so it could be memorized word for word and passed down the same way you'd memorize the lyrics to a song stuck in your head without ever needing to write it down again. By then, beer wasn't a treat. It was infrastructure, closer to bread and water than to anything you'd call a luxury. In Egypt, the laborers who hauled stone for the pyramids at Giza weren't paid only in coin. Archaeologists have excavated entire bakeries and breweries built right beside their workers' town, bread and beer, brewed on an industrial scale, handed out daily as wages. Egyptian medical texts even prescribed beer, mixed with herbs, as medicine. The single most famous monument on the planet was raised, block by block, by people fueled and paid on a drink you would recognize instantly if someone handed it to you today. Fast forward again. The Middle Ages, Europe. In most towns, the water running through the streets wasn't safe to drink. Boiled, fermented grain was, and monks across the continent built parts of their lives around that fact. At an abbey in Bavaria called Weihenstephan, monks have been brewing without interruption since the year 1040. It is still operating today, the oldest continuously running brewery on the planet. Elsewhere, on fasting days when solid food was forbidden by religious rule, monks brewed an extra strong beer and drank it instead of eating, calling it, quite literally, liquid bread. By 1516, brewing had become so central to daily life that Bavaria passed one of the world's oldest food purity laws, just to regulate what could legally go into a glass of beer. Say that phrase again. Liquid bread. The same instinct the Natufians had inside a burial cave. Take grain, transform it into something you share, something that carries you through hardship, survived completely intact, hidden inside a monastery's fasting rules, 10,000 years later. Keep moving. The Industrial Revolution. As people left villages for factory towns, the pub became something new. The one place in a gray, exhausting week that belonged to no boss and no clock. A small, smoky room where a shift worker could sit down as a person again, not as labor. Keep moving again. The First World War. In the trenches, under artillery fire, in mud and cold that most of us will never have to imagine, British soldiers received a daily ration of rum, doled out from stamped earthenware jars. Not for the taste. Commanders knew, and soldiers knew, that a small dose of alcohol before dawn could steady a shaking hand, soften unbearable fear, and hold a unit together for one more hour before going over the top. The same substance, the same small ritual, deployed for the same reason it always has been, to survive something unbearable together instead of alone. And now it's you, cracking a can after work, ordering a round for the table, toasting a birthday, a promotion, a goodbye you didn't want to say out loud. You didn't invent that gesture. You inherited it. From hunter-gatherers who got drunk at funerals before they knew how to plant a field. From scribes who invented writing partly to track who was owed a drink. From workers who built pyramids on it. From monks who fasted with it. From factory workers who reclaimed 1 hour of their week with it. From soldiers who survived a war because of it. From every hand that has ever lifted a cup toward another person and meant something by it. The drink changes. The bottle changes. The century changes completely. The reason never does. You are not drinking because you're thirsty. You are doing exactly what they did in a cave full of the dead, 13,000 years ago, reaching for a moment and reaching for a person worth remembering. You're not the first human to feel this way.